as Gukesh makes his decision. There we go, empty chair.
Do you think he's at the confession already?
Oh yeah, we should mention there is a confessional booth here.
Yeah, and last year it was Hikaru that was the confessional booth winner. And the confessional booth is somewhere where the players can just go in there and confess their thoughts. Normally along the lines of, I've got a surprise, watch what I'm doing. Or, you know, just saying that they're not very happy or they're happy with their position. But Magnus back, and C5 for sure, it's one of the main lines. It will not be a surprise to him, so he just has to make a decision. Is he feeling gutsy? No, he's going to go E3, just to solidify the center, as David has highlighted. So, wow, Gukesh also now answering quickly.
Okay, he brings his bishop out. This is not the main line, at least. I think it is a known move here, and it is very provocative, just asking white to push a pawn forward and block this attack. But I guess he's going to argue that once he retreats his bishop, maybe even quite a long way back, that white's structure isn't quite ideal here. I'm expecting pawn to F3 either way here, Tanya. Yeah, surprise back from Gukesh, I'm going to say.
Yeah, I'm as surprised as you are, because this looks like a Gukesh gambit, a GG here, right? Because you go F3, you force the bishop back, and that C5 pawn is undefended. Yes, it's playing with fire, because in some ways you do lose control of the center. Let's say if you were to push the pawn back, David, the bishop goes back, and you do capture that pawn. It does give black the free hand to perhaps develop the knight and advance that E pawn eventually forward. This could get fun very quickly, Ivanka, if that gambit was accepted.
Yeah, I also think that this is going to be a fun game. But Magnus taking some time to consider the implications of the bishop coming out. Should he go F3? Should he go knight to F3? And it's still early days.
Do you think this is World Championship prep by Gukesh?
Yes.
I think so too.
Yeah.
It has to be, right?
Well, he answered very quickly, right? And I'm for sure he would have prepared something like this. Because of the World Championship, you have to just prepare absolutely everything. But the question is, can you remember everything? It's been a few months. But
how's your memory?
Oh.
Mine is awful, by the way. Just want to put it out there.
Wait, what was the question? Yeah, I think it's an age thing, right? Sometimes if you don't if you don't practice every day, if you don't drill the kind of patterns, force yourself to remember, then it gets harder and harder.
It definitely gets harder, but I would also say there's so much more data as well in the chess world these days. Because when I grew up, when I was Gukesh's age, you literally had maybe 3 variations that you played, and your opponent always played the same thing as well. So different times then. And definitely, chess is a lot more flexible and a lot more variable these days.
Ivanka making us all feel like fossils in the studio.
No.
I miss those days too, where you could just remember one opening, you remember your lines in that opening, and that was enough. You turn up to the table.
I
now you
come
have
from
to
the generation where you pulled out this big book.
The ECOs, the encyclopedias of chess openings,
right.
They were this thick.
And talking of chess encyclopedias, Magnus is one. He's like a walking encyclopedia. And yeah, the main move here, according to the chess.com database, is to push this pawn forward to F3 for white, but black has a huge score there, apparently. So this is interesting. I must admit, pretty much a new variation for me, this bishop move by Gukesh, and it seems like it's a new line for Magnus as well. He's not sure exactly how to respond.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think? Does he take it? Does he take the bait?
No.
No?
I think he's going to do the Boris Spassky approach, which is when you're surprised in the opening, you treat that idea with respect and you play something solid. Because why go all guns blazing in game 1? He has the white pieces. He can rely on the Armageddon to do some damage.
But that's the thing, how much can you actually, I mean, Armageddon, yes, so I think Magnus, he can rely on it, but I think for everyone else who plays against him in this tournament will be so incredibly tense to take the match to the Armageddon. I mean, this guy is the undisputed king of it all. Last Norway chess dominated every single Armageddon. Also, everything that he's been doing in the CCT, in the Chess.com Classic, with the time controls, I think it's just a bad idea to take it to Armageddon with Magnus.
Yes. Unless you want to bank 1 point. You probably won't get the 1.5 if you play Magnus in Armageddon, especially with white. I think his score, I think he's only ever lost 1 Armageddon, or maybe 2, with the white pieces in Norway chess ever.
And he lost in Armageddon to Gukesh, but it was a blunder right at the end. But okay.
Ooh, okay, it's possible.
These two are kind of playing it slowly, but we do have 5 other games. Shall we take it to the bird's eye view and see how the other games are developing? And we can see that, okay, there's been a lot of progress. And maybe we should have a look at the rivalry between Caruana and Nakamura. Let's dive in there. Let's take a walk around the park and do like an assessment on all the openings and who's kind of emerged looking good.
Yeah, and still early days on all of the boards, of course. Yeah, very quick opening play on some of them. Some games, it's clear that players are relying a lot on preparation. Some, they've paused quite early on. But yeah, let's jump into that game first of all. We might not linger too long. It is an exchange Slav, and probably one of my least favorite openings in the world. Especially when I play black, I just can't play this opening because people try this against me and it just always fizzles out to the dullest positions ever. But I guess that's not the worst thing in the world when you're playing black against Fabiano Caruana. And maybe just to retrace our steps, just all the way back to move 1, just to show how we got here. This is move 7 now. We started with a queen's pawn opening. This is the Slav defense where black just backs up the central pawn. And after an exchange in the center, the exchange Slav, known for its drawish reputation here, drawish tendencies, this is the moment where Hikaru chooses to play maybe the lesser of the theoretical moves. You can also bring your bishop out very ambitiously to either of these two squares just to get your bishop out of the pawn chain before you lock it in with e6. Then the white queen will come out to the b3 square, attack a pawn. So Hikaru says, okay, I don't want any kind of fancy stuff there. And only now does he bring his bishop out. Big decision. Does he trade off? I think bishop takes knight is the recommended move here. If you go back, you might invite white to step forward. And things get more complicated. This just looks very, very solid. And Fabi's actually the one using time here, Tanya.
We might see the first imbalance, and there we have it. You know, you let that knight live on, it eventually jumps to the center of the board on that e5 square as well. He wants none of it. Yes, Fabi has got that bishop pair going, but one of the neutralizing ideas is to now get your bishop on d6, trade off the dark squared bishop, and it's sort of a very balanced middle game that goes on because of the symmetrical pawn formation. You know, we might even see a lot of trades down the c file. Bishop b3. I'm expecting Hikaru to do the same with his bishop.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, I played this position from both sides, and I can say that there's a little more poison than we're giving the position credit for, because white does have that ability to kind of take control of the c-line quickly. And we're talking about small margins and like with some potential, but there's ideas of going knight a4 to knight c5 at the right time. You know, also the fact that the queen is on the f3 and that white has the bishop pair for the time being. You know, there's some small kind of like extra space. It's not much, and I'm sure if black plays very accurately, then it will be neutralized. And okay, well, bishop to g5, bishop to e7 played.
Yeah, there's not going to be any repetition with bishop f4, bishop d6. I hope this one goes on, but as it does, David, there's action on the other board, and I think we should jump to that. The final board that we haven't had a look at in the men's section, and there we have it, Wei against Arjun. There's a lot of action in that one. That's the top left board. A lot of trades, open position. The queen lined up against the black king. What's going on there?
Yeah, this is actually an opening that I used to play as a child quite a lot. I haven't had it for many years. I once had this against Wesley So, and it fizzled out quite quickly. But yeah, maybe we jump into that game. And, yeah, of course, we'll go to the other games at the bottom of our screens there very shortly. But yeah, this position, it came from a French defense. You might not have guessed it, but since French defenses normally end up very, very blocked. But this was the Tarash variation. And again, let's just do a quick action replay. This knight d2 move, it's out of fashion at the top level completely these days, mainly because of this move, pawn to c5, blowing open the center. And here, after a bunch of exchanges, here, white taking the black knight. The trendy move is actually to take with the pawn. Maybe this is what Wei was hoping for, to keep more tension. The white bishop looks like it's losing a bit of time. It will drop back. But the argument is that the black bishop ends up being a bit of a bad piece, stuck behind its own pawns. So here, Arjun actually elects to trade this bishop off. And now this is how the white queen lands up. Kind of eyeing up the black king on the diagonal. Black just defends with the queen, one of the main moves. And after some exchanges, yeah, this position, it looks like white's going to get a better pawn structure. I think that will be true. Black, for example, after a trade here, will be left with 2 pawn islands on the queen side. But black is so active. There have been a bunch of trades already, and knowing Arjun Erigaisi, he's prepared this. And yeah, it's got a very solid reputation, I've got to say, for black.
Yeah. Would you say it's a position of 2 results where only white is the one that's going to be pressing for the win, even though, you know, black does have enough activity to offset the weaknesses of the pawns?
That's what I used to tell myself, at least when I played it as a younger player. I was like, yeah, it's safe. Play this against a GM, you won't lose. But I don't know, against Arjun, you can never guarantee that anything is completely safe.
But one thing about Arjun is he likes more pieces on the board, you know, to get those interesting complications going. So I think Wei's done a very smart approach out of the opening, and there are plans of white fan-shadowing his dark squared bishop on the long diagonal, trying to create some weakness with that isolated queen's pawn. So I do think optically it looks like what Jovanka is saying, you know, it could turn out once those trades happen that white's the one with that slight push, that slight edge into the game. And I also want to just touch upon these two players, you know, just their style of chess, because Wei, the youngest ever player to break 2700, he did it when he was 15. He was started as sort of this prince of chess, the biggest chess wizard from China, and I don't think you can sleep on him in this tournament. You know, he, over the last 2 years, has made such a big comeback, has once again skyrocketed his world rankings. He's in the world top 10 already. He won the Tata Steel in 2024, had a fantastic performance. His chess, always entertaining, always fascinating to watch. And I think he's someone who, at his best, could very well take the title of Norway chess.
Yeah, he's a dark horse in this particular competition. You know, like you say, you know, he's razor sharp, excellent calculation, and he has a fantastic feel for the initiative, and that's incredibly useful, especially the Armageddon format, you know, where you need to play on your wits. And it's an interesting choice that Arjun has gone for, you know, just saying, hey, I want the activity, I'm comfortable with the position, and yeah, we'll see how this one develops. But it's certainly looking like it's either going to fizzle out pretty quickly or the tension will just keep on building.
Yeah, I definitely feel Wei actually plays better these days against the very best players when they kind of let him play. In Vaikanze and the Tata Steel Masters earlier this year, he drew, I think it was 12 out of his 13 games. That was because people were so scared of him, they were just trying to lock it down. They were just trying to neutralize him. But here, he will get chances. People will be trying to beat him. He's the lowest rated player. And that means he'll get chances on the counter.
And what about Arjun, right? Because this is such a huge opportunity for the Indian Grandmaster. You know, he struggled to get invited into these top tournaments. He had this this incredible performance of getting to the 2,800 bracket and crossing the 2,800 mark, becoming only the second Indian after Vishwanathan Anand to have ever done that. And I think only 16 players in the history of the game have crossed 2,800. That super duper elite club, Arjun being one of them. And now here he is. And I think this has been spoken about in the chess world as well, that, you know, Arjun, he can perform really well against the lower rated. You know, we saw his wins in all the opens that he played, the amazing 2024 he has, but does he really have it in him to prove himself when he's playing the absolute best in the world? So I think he wants to prove that narrative wrong here. This is his big chance. This is his big opportunity, and he's hungry for it.
Yeah, he's hungry for it. I just saw someone carrying some snacks as well. That made me hungry. But Tanya, you mentioned 2,800. I've crossed that on chess.com. Does that count?
It counts for us.
It counts for us. But OK, let's zoom out of that game. And yeah, we do have 3 games in the women's Norway chess women here. Maybe we do a quick dive on those, and then we'll talk about the decision that Magnus Carlsen made after a bit of a thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we go to the bottom right and have a look at the rivalry between Lee Ting-jae and Ju Wenjun? They're great friends off the board, but on the board, you know, we can remember 2023, their World Championship match, where it was went all the way down to the wire, except game 12. Yeah. And that was the whole thing that turned it around. Ju Wenjun won, and she remained Women's World Champion. And of course, in Norway chess last year, it was Ju Wenjun had the better score. But what do we think about this position? Maybe we can quickly just recap the moves and see how we got here, because the pawn structure looks very stable, and I say that, and then A5 appears. And now it's not looking as stable.
Yeah, that is a brave move. We'll need to do some calculation ourselves here in a moment. But just to show everyone how we got here, this is actually the game that's most developed, at least in terms of moves, across the events so far. It was the Petrov defense. This is a Chinese speciality, also known as the Russian defense for the Petrov here. Both sides attacking central pawns, a trade of those pawns, and always ends up with a relatively symmetrical pawn structure. It feels like, again, the Chinese school of chess, they've been advocating this system with the black knight retreating, a trade of bishops now on this square, often, or the light squared bishops coming off. And it looks very, very level, apart from the fact that white's slightly ahead in development. The white knight now very strong. White has the access to the e-file here. Finally, the exchange is made, and a few moves down the line. This is how we got here. A bit of pressure now on the b7 square, since the black knight can be removed as a defender, forcing black to step forward with the pawn. Challenged, and a5. What do we make of this? Very committal from Ju Wenjun.
Indeed it is, but look at the clock management, Ivanka. I mean, she's barely taken any time, so it appears that it's part of some prep, because to me, it does look like a pawn sacrifice at first. White has a very direct line, and I think this is what you were alluding to, that we need to dive deeper and calculate what happens once you trade the knight, pick up the pawn on b5. Let's point out there are pins along the b file, so I wonder if that's what Wenjun has in mind.
Yeah, and big question as well, whether to trade rooks, I'm not sure. Let's say white takes off the rook, just to keep things simple for us. I don't like calculating when there's too many pieces on the board. And yeah, pins on the b file, as you mentioned here, Tanya.
You've got to use the queen, because the rook needs to stay connected to the a5 pawn.
Exactly, rook to b8, and white goes 2 pawns ahead. So queen across. The bar doesn't move, which is good news when we make moves. And wow, yeah, keeping things intact. I do notice there's a key detail here that the white knight cannot come forward and put pressure on this central pawn, because actually black has some ideas on this diagonal as well. Maybe white can try this, but yeah, if black gets one more move, takes this pawn with the queen, looks like things might be level. She actually, going back to the game, takes the pawn first. This is the current position. And now at least black has the idea of taking back with the knight. You cannot take with the pawn as you would drop d5.
Yes, and OK, this is super interesting, but I also have some gossip. Do you want to hear it? Yes. You know that there's a confessional booth?
Yes.
Someone has already taken the lead in that. Can you guess who?
Magnus Carlsen.
No.
Not Magnus. He was away from the board for ages.
Who took the lead in the confessional? It was...
Give a name.
Hikaru.
Hikaru, of course. Hikaru Nakamura has visited the confessional booth. We'll be playing it during the break, but that's only available for subscribers. So if you want to listen to Hikaru's confession, then you do need to subscribe on Twitch to the chess.com channel, and you'll hear everything he has to say. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah. We always talk about him as the fourth commentator. Hopefully he gives us a deep dive, not just on his own game, of all the games, on his mindset, of what he had for lunch. You know, I want to know it all. Come on, Hikaru.
It's like super fascinating, right? Because, you know, like take this position that we have right in front of us between Lee Ting-jae and Ju Wenjun. Ju Wenjun playing super quickly. We're assuming it's prep. Say she goes to the confessional, goes, you know what, guys? I am completely blagging this.
Bluff Central.
I love the confession booth. I mean, it just gives us so many insights into the player's mind and what's going on there. But with Hikaru, not just into his own game, like you said, but everything around it. And it's so important. What is his mindset coming into this tournament? You know, he has spoken about himself, that how much this matters to him, because he's been considering retiring from classical chess if this was not to be a good tournament for him. What does that mean? Will he fight for his candidate spot? Will he try for another World Championship cycle? So much of it comes down to how Hikaru plays in Norway, in Stavanger.
It's true. I was actually going to ask both of you about that statement. Do you think that he's just saying that just in some kind of way to soothe himself and perhaps get ready for the fact that he might not win? Or do you think he's genuinely serious that he's going to retire and not kind of play classical chess in the way that he's used to?
Oh, that's a tough question, right? I think it's a bit of both, Jovanka. Like Hikaru, I'm going to say post-streaming Hikaru, like ever since he started turning on the camera and started posting these incredible results across all time formats, he clearly just loves playing without pressure. He loves playing for fun. He loves playing because he can, because he's good at it, not because he expects results. So I think he's very aware of that, whether that's manifested in him just telling him certain things, whether he's kind of prioritizing certain things, who knows, only he does. But I think we all want to see him challenge for the world title at least 1 or 2 more times.
I mean, it just blows my mind that we're even having this conversation considering that Hikaru is the world #2. It's insane, right? The kind of chess that he produces and the fact that he is